Mend it!
What the freak, Spencer? What are you doing here?
I heard you were fishing. I figured you could use some help.
Okay.
Mend it!
What?
Mend it!
Mend what? It's not broken.
Mend it!
Dude, what are you talking about? Fish on!
See? All you had to do was mend it.
There are a ton of terms that get thrown around in the fly fishing world. It almost seems like a different language sometimes. Two of those terms that we hear a lot are high sticking and mending. These two techniques are absolutely vital to becoming a successful fly angler. Both of them look a little bit different, but they each come to the same conclusion. They both have the same goal, and that is to achieve a drag-free drift or a dead drift. We're gonna use both of those terms interchangeably. In the last masterclass video, we talked all about picking the right fly. But even if you use that right fly formula and pick the perfect fly out of your fly box, that ain't gonna matter much if your fly's doing 100 miles per hour down the river expressway and doesn't care about getting a ticket. Yes, picking the right fly, it's important. But I would argue that perfecting your presentation and making your fly look and behave like a real bug, it's even more important. So when I say drag-free or dead drift, what does that actually mean? My favorite way to visualize this is to imagine a leaf floating on the water surface. Notice that it drifts naturally, letting the current take it wherever it wants to go. Our flies should act the same way, drifting naturally, drag-free like a real bug would. Fish have fantastic eyesight and are able to spot the tiniest of details. If your fly starts to drag and looks like it's attached to your leader or your fly line, that fish is probably gonna ignore your fly. But if you're able to achieve that drag-free drift, the chances that you'll catch a fish skyrocket. So how do we get good presentation? How do we get our flies to drift without any drag? It comes back to our two terms, mending and high sticking. So first, let's briefly go over the keys to successful high sticking and mending, and then we'll go out on the water and we'll show you exactly how to do it. You'll use high sticking when you're fishing at shorter distances, when you're able to sneak up on those fish like you would in pocket water. And there are 3 keys to doing this successfully. Number 1, it's pretty obvious, but you gotta keep that rod tip high in the air. This is gonna help us with key number 2, which is to keep as much fly line and leader off the water as possible. When high sticking, you'll have your fly and maybe like 3 to 4 feet of leader on the water, and that's it. The biggest mistake I see when people are high sticking, by far, is they have way too much line outside of their rod tip. And then key number 3 is to have your slack line tucked under one of your fingers. This is gonna allow you to have a tight connection and be able to set the hook at a moment's notice. So high sticking is great when you're fishing smaller rivers or pocket water or when you can get really close to those fish. But what happens if you have to fish from further away? What happens when you have to throw those longer casts? You still need that drag-free drift, right? That is where mending comes into play. So let's imagine we're standing in a river. We'll call that point A, and we're casting to a fish near the other bank, point B. As we look across the river, we notice that the current changes. We're standing in some slower water, we've got faster water out in the middle, and then it slows down again where the fish is hanging out. If we take our fly line and we cast it straight across at that fish, the moment that line hits the water, the current is gonna grab that line, create a belly, which is another good term to know, and yank it downstream, dragging your fly along with it. So in order to fight that current and achieve that drag-free drift, we're gonna make that same cast and then mend the fly line upstream, eliminating drag and hopefully catching that fish. And then there might be times when you find yourself in the opposite position, where the water between you and the fish is moving slower than where the fish is holding. In that situation, you would make downstream mends. Now I know this was a lot of rapid fire information, but now that we have the big picture, we can start diving into the details and solidify all of this by going out on the water and walking you through it step by step.
So, let's take everything we just learned about mending, drag-free drift, all that fun stuff, and actually put it into practice here on the water. Now, let me put my tactical F1 fish binoculars back on. There we go. Never leave home without them, kids. Just a little bit of background on what I'm fishing today. I got a dry dropper. I would tell you the flies that I'm using, but that's need-to-know information. You have the clearance. I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. PMD and a Frenchie. Okay, super simple little rig, just a good dry dropper rig. And I've got a nice, long, beautiful run behind me. I'm gonna start at the bottom, work my way on up this little run. And I'm gonna need to do quite a bit of mending. The water's still a little high, I'm running a little quick right now. So I am gonna have to do some mends to make sure my drifts are looking as pretty as possible. So I'm just gonna start here at the bottom of the run. Get a little bit of line out. Drop that dry fly on the foam line, and I'm throwing some mends in it. Keep my fly line above it, so it gets a nice drag-free drift. Take another step up here. Again, throw those mends right as it hits the water. It's going to eliminate the drift, or eliminate the drag, pardon me. And something else is a question that we've had a lot. It's hard sometimes to make a mend without moving your dry fly or indicator. If it moves a little bit right when you throw your mend at the very beginning of the drift, that's fine. The fly really hasn't had a chance to settle at that point anyways. So don't freak out if there's just a little bit of movement when you throw your first mend, as long as it's at the very start of the drift. Here, fishy, fishy, fishy. So that was a downstream mend, so I had to get my line in the same speed current. And there we go. Just like that, little downstream mend right into a fish. Beautiful. So I'd like to review a couple of things that you may have already heard if you listen to the Untangled podcast. It's episode 28, How to Mend Like the Pros. But there's a couple of mending concepts that are really important to keep in mind for everybody. First one, you want to make sure that you use the whole rod when you're going through the mending process. Don't try to mend with just the tip. You want to use the whole rod to help you move that line. The second thing to remember is you're not trying to recast the line. You're literally just trying to pick it up and move it to a different place. That's all a mend is you're picking up and moving the line. Lastly, you want to make sure that you pick up, move the line, and end with a little bit of a flick of your wrist. That'll help to shoot that line out there and get it where you want it to be. But you want to do that all on a fluid motion. You don't want to just pick up, stop, then flick the wrist. It should be a smooth pickup and flick. So I just got a fish right here, and I'm gonna run a few more drifts through it. I'm just throwing some mends to keep my line and fly moving at the same speed. And that fish kind of ate right where I expected him to. So I'm gonna run a few more mends through that general area, because I bet there's more than one fish that wants to come party today. Maybe there's not, I don't know. But usually where you find one of them, there's more. So again, here's that downstream mend to keep my fly line and fly moving at the same speed. Very important to do that. A lot of times we're always thinking about our upstream mends, but sometimes those downstream mends are just as important. The water right here is very slow. Out there it's fast. So I have to throw that downstream mend to keep the line and fly moving at the same speed. If I don't, I'm gonna start getting some drag. I don't know how well that shows up, but there's a little bit of drag on that fly. It's all about keeping the line and the fly moving at the same speed. Oh, just missed him, dang it. Keep the line and the fly moving the same speed, no drag. That's what you're looking for. There we go. Put it right there in the soft water. So I caught 2 fish right here pretty close to me in this kind of that seam between the fast and the slow water. But over there against the rock ledge, there's a couple of softer pockets of water. So I'm gonna try and hit those. So I'm gonna need a little bit of mending skills to hit those. So let's see what that looks like. So I want this fly to land right there on the bank. And there's actually such little room that I'm gonna end up high sticking this, it looks like. So remember, you're high sticking, you're getting as much line a leader off the water as possible. You want a very drag-free drift. You usually gotta get quite a bit closer. Ooh, I think I just missed one right there. But I'm just letting that fly drift, just lifting my leader off the water. I'm watching the fly super close to make sure there's no drag. And you see I'm casting just mostly leader, barely letting that fly touch before I'm lifting all the line straight up and off. So looking up river here, there's a bunch of really good spots. There's a pocket there, there's a nice eddy on the other side of it, but there's a really big seam and a nice slow push right here in front of me. So I want to fish this stuff first, because again, you want to fish close to far, right? So I'm going to hit this stuff first and then kind of work my way up to those 2 really prime looking pockets. One little key with mending, you've got to manage your slack line. So you can't have too much slack between yourself and the fly. Otherwise, when a fish takes it, you're gonna have so much slack, you're not gonna be able to set that hook. So always keep it tucked up underneath the rod, underneath the grip like this. And just make sure you're pulling in line as needed so that you have fairly tight connection to your fly. It's gonna make a big difference. Move up a little bit. So on these last couple of casts, I'm getting some drag. So that tells me I either need to mend or lift my line off the water. So I chose to lift, no drag now. So that's something to always be watching for. Go down a lift, just kind of high sticking this through. Here, fishy, fishy, fishy. Boom! I think he hit the dry fly. Oh yeah. That was good times right there. So one thing you might want to notice, how far am I standing from the bank? Not very far. I'm not in super far, and that's something that a lot of folks, I think, tend to make mistakes with presentation wise, and see this in mending is we try to get like right up where we think the fish are, and you almost stand right on the fish. You want to stand further back. That's a lot of why we end up needing to mend, because we're standing further back. It's just part of making sure you position yourself in the right spot so that you can get a good presentation. And if you have to throw those mends, so be it. Cuddy!
This is your off-camera netman toss.
This still going?
Ready?
Oh, you're supposed to net it. That's the off-camera netman's job. He's the off-camera netman in training.
Beautiful fish.
Oh yeah. All this stuff, mending, drag-free drifts, high sticking, good presentations. That's a ton of information to take in, and you certainly do not need to be an expert at it right now. Make sure you get out on the water, utilize it every time you're out there, because these are skills that you're gonna use every time you go fishing. So it's stuff that you're gonna get better at the more time you spend out on the water. Now, with all that said, get yourself ready for the next video coming up in this series, which is all about fishing dry fly.